Todd, what do you think about this latest development here?
Well, I think it's a shame. I think it's actually going to cause a lot of problems for Indiana post-NCAA in the Final Four. Anytime you have a law that's arguably meant to discriminate against anyone, there are economic consequences to discrimination. And so when Governor Pence signed it into law, interestingly, number one, he did it in a private ceremony, so he didn't want to call attention to it. And then he actually compared it to Illinois, saying, well, Illinois has the same kind of a law. But it was basically doubling down because Indiana already did not have protections for LGBT people in that state. So you could legally be fired for being gay in Indiana even before this law.
And the thing is, of course, people who like the law would say it's not about discrimination, it's about religious freedom. And we're actually looking at a map here of the states that do have religious freedom restoration acts, quite a few. Sam, what did you think of the NCAA response? I mean, this puts them in a really rough spot. I mean, not only do they have operations in the state, but they have to play in the state.
Yeah, I mean, the timing's awful. You're talking about the Super Bowl of college sports coming to Indianapolis next week. You have a couple 100,000 people that are going to be making the trip to Indiana. You have $1 billion in ad revenue that goes throughout March Madness. The NCAA as an organization of inclusion has got to be vocal on this matter next week. And if they don't, their sponsors are going to force them to.
You think? Because he has seen some businesses kind of reach out. We saw Salesforce.com CEO sort of post on Twitter yesterday urging businesses to get out of Indiana. We also saw Tim Cook, Apple CEO Tim Cook, saying he was deeply disappointed in Indiana. Is it the responsibility of private businesses to put pressure now?
And I think that you have a variety of big events coming that the NCAA has coming up in the years to come. They have another Final Four for men. They have another Final Four for women. They have the NFL Combine that comes to Indianapolis every year. They have the Big Ten Championship through 2021. They have to get out in front, and 450,000 college students are student athletes. They're supposed to be the role model. They have to get out in front of it.
Todd, do you think this stops players?
Well, I think it's going to cause concern, right? Jason Collins tweeted that he hopes that when he travels to Indiana, that he's not going to be discriminated against. I mean, it really does call into question basic safety for these players, for the student athletes, and ultimately, as I mentioned, it is going to cause challenge for business.
And we were just looking at a tweet here from Jason Collins. He's the NBA's first openly gay player, and he tweeted this: "It is going to be legal for someone to discriminate against me and others when we come to the Final Four," and that's sort of the big question here. Ray, when you take a look at this, and we see this sort of plaguing the NCAA, as well as the whole pay-for-play rule as well, are we going to pay basketball players and athletes? Is there a reputational issue, reputational damage to the NCAA right now?
I certainly think it's going to be a challenge. I think when you look at the pay-for-play issue, you have to consider, if you look at the 15 coaches of the 16 that are disclosed and their median and mean salary, the mean is $3.7 million, the median is $2.1 million. The money is clearly there. So along with the other issue, yes, it's a reputational and public relations challenge.
But not for every school. I mean, it's only a few schools that are going to break above even, right? They'll only have extra cash to wind up paying players. A lot of them don't even break even at all.
Well, the truth of the matter is when you say break even, many of them are run as nonprofits, particularly the state organizations. And when you're a nonprofit, you basically have to spend the money. So you end up with exceptional facilities for the revenue sports. And the non-revenue sports remain challenged. Mm-hmm. And if you look at conference realignment, which has taken place, in many cases, the non-revenue athletes are the ones that are challenged by it. Because now if you want to play a golf match and you're in the Big East, for example, you're not just staying in the Northeast. You may have to go to Creighton, and that's a tough trip. Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting conundrum.
Sam, what do you think the NCAA's biggest challenge then is right now?
I think that they have to look at the fact that they have to be ahead of this issue right away. They've done this before, so this isn't unprecedented for the NCAA. Just a few years ago, they did this with the Indiana law to make marriage illegal for gay, lesbian, and bisexual couples. A few years before that, they did it with the mascot. There was a mascot issue of 13 schools that got hit with sanctions from the NCAA regarding mascots that had violated discrimination issues. So the NCAA has done this before. The Super Bowl did it with Arizona with the same type of situation.
Right.
This is not outside of their...
No, it's going to be a very tough issue. Guys, thank you so much for joining me on this very complicated issue, particularly for the NCAA.